I paid exactly $22 for a ranch, but the first thing I saw was a girl hanging from a rope just outside the gate, and it didn't end there. She wasn't just any girl. Welcome to Wild West storytelling. Let's get started. Late afternoon on the prairie. The sun poured down hot and gold, as if it meant to burn the earth bare. Elias Ward eased back on the reins, his horse blowing hard after the long ride, red dust clinging to his old leather coat. Ahead, the weathered gate of a ranch came into view, a spread of 100 acres he'd bought that very morning for exactly $22. He figured he'd find nothing more than a few rotting boards and a crooked roof, but then he saw it. From the doorway of an abandoned barn, a body hung limp, bare feet swaying in the hot wind. An old rope bit deep into her neck. Beneath her lay a broken chair, and beside it, a scorched plank with black letters scrawled in a rough hand. Traitor. Death is the punishment. Elias didn't hesitate. He drove the horse forward, hit the ground in one stride, and had his knife out, steel flashing once before it sliced clean through the rope. Her body collapsed into his arms, light as a dry branch. Her breath rattled, the skin around her neck dark with bruises. The smell of hay mixed with the faint tang of blood. Kneeling in the dirt, Elias pressed his mouth to hers, forced air into her lungs, then slammed his fist hard into her chest. A cough tore out of her, eyes fluttering open, dazed, fixing on him. "Go, get out," she rasped, voice raw and thin. Elias held her firm, his eyes like flint. "No one hangs a person on my land and walks away." The wind shifted, knocking the wooden sign against the post with a hollow clack. A ranch for $22, and a life nearly lost on it. Elias began to wonder what kind of shadows were hiding behind the bargain he'd bought. "I'm grateful you've given me the chance to share this with you tonight. Tell me where you're listening from, and I hope, wherever that may be, you're safe and happy." The girl was still trembling when Elias helped her into the main house. The roof leaked, the plank walls were cracked. The damp smell of rotting wood mingled with the cold, dead scent of an unused hearth. He set her down on a long bench and handed her a canteen. She drank in small sips, her eyes never leaving the door, as if she feared someone might burst in at any moment. "Who are you?" Elias asked, his voice low just enough to drown out the sound of his own heartbeat. "Lydia Kane." She set the canteen down, her thin hands still shaking. "And this used to be my home." Elias narrowed his eyes. "Used to be?" Lydia gave a faint laugh, but it carried the taste of bitterness. "Until the Maddox family took it. My father tapped a deep water vein under this land, enough to keep the whole town alive through the drought. He meant to sell the water at a fair price. Maddox wanted it all for himself." She paused, swallowing hard. "One day, the well collapsed. They called it an accident, but I know it wasn't. On the day we buried my father, Maddox came with transfer papers signed in a hand that wasn't mine. I never signed, but they forced me out anyway. Only," Lydia's eyes met his, steady, "I never truly left." Elias stayed silent. In her eyes, he saw something he'd once stared at in the mirror during his darkest years, when you've lost everything, yet still force yourself to stand straight. "So, today's hanging?" he asked. A warning. Her voice dropped. "They've been searching for that water vein for 3 years. I have my father's map and his geological surveys. No one but me knows where they are. And today, I guess they decided to scare me into disappearing for good." Outside, a gust of wind drove red dust through the open window, rattling the warped frame. Elias looked out over the bare, open fields. He'd bought a patch of dirt for cheap along with a fight that wasn't his. But in the West, trouble didn't always come to ask your permission. Sometimes it came to see if you deserved the ground you stood on. "Do you have anywhere else to go?" Elias asked. Lydia shook her head. "Only the well, and the men willing to kill for it." Elias leaned back against the wall, feeling the thump of his own pulse. Never had a land deal left him feeling indebted. From far off, along the trail leading into the ranch, a sound began to roll in hoofbeats. Not fast enough to be urgent, but not slow enough to be the gate of travelers, either. Elias and Lydia locked eyes. Both understood. This wasn't a neighbor come to welcome the new owner. The hoofbeats grew louder, carrying across the open ground like war drums before a storm. Elias stepped onto the porch, narrowing his eyes toward the dusty trail. Far off, 3 riders took shape, red dust boiling up behind them. "Harper." Lydia's voice was a rough whisper. Elias glanced at her. You know him? Wade Harper, Maddox's longtime enforcer. If he's here, it means they've picked up the trail. She moved quickly to the corner of the room. From beneath a worn rug, Lydia pulled a small wooden box. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, was a roll of parchment and several yellowed sheets of paper, the ink faded with age. The water vein map, Lydia said, unrolling it across the table. The meticulous lines showed every twist and turn beneath the earth, special marks indicating key points. It took my father nearly 10 years to measure, drill test holes, mark every branch, every feeder vein. The main line runs right under the north pasture. Elias studied it closely, realizing this was more than a map. Clipped to the edge were detailed notes on depth, capacity, and methods for channeling the water. If this ever fell into Maddox's hands, the whole region would be under his thumb. Outside, the hoofbeats stopped. A man's voice called out rough, but clear. "Ward, heard you just bought this ranch. We need to talk." Elias looked at Lydia. She hurried to roll the map back up and slid it into a narrow gap beneath the floorboards. "He won't leave until he's torn this place apart," she said. Elias stepped onto the porch. The 3 riders were lined up. Harper in the center, brim of his hat pulled low, eyes squinting against the glare. The 2 men beside him stayed silent, hands resting easy but ready on their revolvers. "What do you want?" Elias asked evenly, his own hand brushing the Colt at his side. "Just heard there's a stranger holding something that doesn't belong to him," Harper said, smiling without warmth. "You bought this place fine, but there's something here that needs to go back to its rightful owner." Elias didn't blink. "Sale papers are at the town office. Go ask there." Harper gave a dry chuckle, like sand sliding in a pan. "I'm not talking about the land, Ward. I'm talking about water." In that moment, Elias knew Lydia had been telling the truth. Maddox's men knew about the vein, and they'd do anything to get it. Harper didn't dismount right away. He leaned forward in the saddle, resting both hands on the horn, his gaze sweeping over the ranch as if he already knew every grain of wood and every crack in the boards. "You know," he said slowly, "out here in the West, water's worth more than gold, and something that valuable, it doesn't just fall into the hands of a stranger." The 2 riders beside him split apart, one drifting along the fence line, the other heading toward the old well. They moved like men on their own land, not bothering to ask. Elias kept his voice even. "You're standing on my land, Harper. Best you ride off would be better for everyone." Harper's mouth curled. "Number, I think. I'll stay a while. At least until I find what I came for." Inside, Lydia shifted slightly. The floorboard hiding the map was still loose, and she knew a single careless step could give it away. Elias glanced back over his shoulder, his eyes giving a clear signal. "Stay still." Harper urged his horse forward 1 step, the iron shoes striking the dirt with a sound like war drums. "Ward, I'll give you a chance. Bring the girl out here, hand me what she's holding, and we'll ride away, peaceful." Elias didn't answer. He rested one hand on the porch post, fingers tapping lightly in old habit when he was weighing his options. He knew Harper wasn't after the map alone. The man wanted control, and a man like that never rode off just because you told him to. "No one here but me," Elias said, voice flat and steady, like water from a deep well. Harper chuckled, but the sound never reached his eyes. He tilted his head toward the man searching by the well. "Check around the house. Take your time. If Ward's got complaints, fire a warning shot." The man started toward the steps. Elias shifted just enough to block the path, his hand resting near the grip of his revolver. The whole yard sank into a thick, heavy silence, broken only by the wind, knocking the wooden sign against the post clack. Clack. Inside, Lydia heard every word, every pause. She bit her lip until she tasted blood. 3 years on the run had taught her one truth. When Maddox's men find you, either you run or you fight. But this time, she wasn't alone. Harper tilted his head, eyes narrowing. "I'll warn you, Ward. Water always finds its way back to its rightful owner, and if you try to hold on to it, you'll be buried beneath this very ground. I'm grateful you're here. If this story has stirred memories of the old days, the red-dusted afternoons, the echo of hoofbeats in your chest, then subscribe to my channel, so each day we can sit together again, and I'll share another tale from the Old West." Elias stood square at the base of the steps, body angled just enough, his eyes locked on the man closing in. "I won't say it again," he said, voice as flat and hard as whetstone. "Step back." The man froze mid-stride, glancing toward Harper. Harper didn't answer right away. He stepped down from the saddle, slow and deliberate, the jingle of the spurs on his heels ticking like a countdown. When his boots hit the dirt, less than 3 paces separated them. "You think," Harper said, eyes narrowing, "a bargain land buyer can hold on to something the whole territory's hungry for?" Elias didn't blink. "I think a man like you ought to think twice before stepping onto my ground." A gust of wind swept through, carrying the smell of scorched grass and dry dust, tugging at Elias's coat. Harper's hand found the grip of his revolver, thumb flicking the leather strap loose. The tiny click rang out like thunder at high noon. Inside the house, Lydia pressed the map tighter beneath the floorboard, heart hammering. She knew a single moment's hesitation could cost them both. And then her foot shifted. The floor gave a faint, betraying creak. Harper's head snapped toward the door. "So, not just you." Elias didn't move, but his hand slid closer to the butt of his Colt. "Could be a cat. Or could be your own shadow." Harper's smile was thin. "You're betting your life on a lie." He motioned to the man on his left to circle toward the back door. Elias knew if that happened, Lydia would be trapped. He took one step forward, cutting off the path entirely. "No one searches my house while I'm standing here." The air was thick as tar. 3 men squared off, hands hovering near their guns, eyes unblinking. One wrong sound, and blood would hit the dirt. Then from a distance the sound of other hoofbeats broke the standoff. Faster, heavier, more of them. Harper tilted his head slightly, brows drawing tight. Elias could hear it too, at least 4, maybe 5 horses, riding hard straight for the ranch. "Friends of yours?" Harper asked, his tone gone sharp. Elias didn't answer. But inside, Lydia whispered just loud enough for herself. "Sheriff." The hoofbeats came faster now, pounding like war drums. Harper turned, squinting at the plume of dust rising on the east trail. Moments later, 5 riders broke into view. At their head was Sheriff Colton Bennett, his long coat snapping in the wind, the silver badge on his chest catching the light. Bennett didn't slow right away. He brought his men in close, fanning into a half-circle that cut off every escape from the ranch. Winchesters came down from saddle scabbards, barrels leveled straight at Harper and his men. "Wade Harper." Bennett's voice rang hard as steel. "Take your hand off that gun and step back." Harper gave a low chuckle, but his hand stayed where it was. "Sheriff, I was just having a friendly word with the new owner here. No need to turn this into something bigger." Bennett's tone sharpened. "It got big the day you and Maddox sabotaged the Kane well and killed Thomas Kane. And today, I've got a witness." A wave of silence rolled over the yard. Lydia stood in the doorway, one hand gripping the frame, her eyes wide. Harper kept the smile, but his shoulders tightened. "Your witness? Some old drunk, I suppose." "Pete Harden." Bennett shot back. "He was right there, saw you pull the brace, saw the well cave in while Thomas was still down there. And now, with his word and the papers on that water vein, I've got enough to hang Maddox's whole crew." Harper's eyes flicked to Lydia, sharp as a blade. "Papers, huh?" He turned back to Elias. "So, you took in this little snake and kept her under your roof?" Elias didn't move. "I'm just keeping what belongs to its rightful owner." Bennett's reins creaked as he tightened them, his horse pawing the dirt, kicking up dust. "Last chance, Harper. Drop the gun. No one needs to die today." But Elias saw the glint in Harper's eye, the cold, familiar flicker of a man who'd rather die in a blaze than swing from a rope. Harper knew that if he let himself be taken alive, the gallows awaited. And men like him drove first. His hand flexed. His shoulders shifted. Elias slid a half step to the side, bracing for the break. The air was thick enough to split. Then Lydia stepped out of the doorway, empty-handed, but her voice was steady. "Enough. You want the papers? They're right here." Elias snapped his head toward her, eyes flashing with disbelief. Harper turned slowly to face her, his smile sharpening like a knife. Lydia stepped slowly down the porch steps, her eyes never leaving Harper. In her hands was a bundle wrapped in oilcloth, tied tight. "Let Elias go," she said, "and you can have what you came for." Harper's mouth curled, like a wolf catching the scent of blood. "You see, Ward, women always know how to end things." Elias tilted his head, his voice low but cutting. "Lydia, don't." "No choice." She cut him off. Harper moved in, his hand leaving the gun grip to take the bundle. But before he could touch it, Sheriff Bennett's voice rang out. "You might want to think twice, Harper. That bundle is just one more piece of evidence to put you on the gallows. I've already got a witness now, I'll have the papers too." Harper froze, anger flashing in his eyes. "Evidence? Don't mean a damn thing if the one holding it is dead." His hand snapped to his revolver, fast as a striking rattler. Elias lunged sideways, shoving Lydia clear. The gunshot cracked like a whip, the bullet tearing through Elias's sleeve. In that same heartbeat, Bennett and 2 deputies fired as one. Harper jerked back, blood blooming bright against the dust on his coat. He staggered, eyes full of hate, before crashing to the dirt. Hooves pounded as his men threw down their weapons and raised their hands in surrender. Sheriff Bennett swung down from the saddle, motioning for the others to shackle the survivors. He turned to Lydia, his voice softening. "Miss Kane, I'm sorry justice came late, but now we can see this through." Lydia unwrapped the bundle, revealing the rolled parchment and her father's detailed notes. "It's all here proof my father struck the vein, and that Maddox killed him to take it." Bennett nodded, passing it to a deputy to seal. "I'll present this to the territorial court. With this and the testimony, Maddox won't have a hole to crawl into." Elias pressed a hand to his grazed arm, blood seeping between his fingers. Lydia stepped to him, her hand closing around his, worry and gratitude mingling in her eyes. "If it weren't for you," he gave a faint smile. "This ranch is mine. Anyone who hangs a person on my land, we settle accounts." Bennett mounted up, signaling the escort to take the prisoners and Harper's body away. When the dust of their departure settled, only Elias and Lydia remained on the porch, the wind of the setting sun carrying the scent of dry grass and gun smoke. Sunset stretched across the fields, turning the red dust into a ribbon of glowing gold. The hoofbeats of the sheriff and his escort faded toward the horizon, leaving behind a silence that felt heavy, yet strangely lighter. Elias leaned against the porch post, his left shoulder still bleeding through the tear in his shirt, but his eyes more at ease than they had been in years. Lydia stepped out, carrying a clean strip of cloth and a bowl of warm water. She knelt, carefully washing the wound. "You know," she said softly, "for 3 years I never thought I'd live to see this day." The day the truth was finally spoken out loud. Elias looked out at the field, where the last light of day danced over the tall grass. Truth usually comes late, but it comes. The question is who's got the grit to wait for it. She looked up, catching his gaze, and in it she saw not just determination, but something warmer. "And now, what will you do with this land?" He gave a faint, crooked smile. "First, I think I'll fix that gate. Then patch the roof. And the well. Maybe it needs someone who knows just how precious it is to watch over it." Lydia tilted her head, a slight curve at her lips. "Sounds like you're hiring." Elias offered his calloused hand. "I think this ranch is big enough for 2 people who know how to work and how to keep their word." She placed her slender hand in his, giving it a small squeeze. "Deal." Above them, the first stars began to flicker. The night wind carried the cool, damp scent from deep underground, a quiet promise that the water still flowed somewhere beneath their feet. Elias drew in a deep breath, feeling for the first time in years that he wasn't standing alone against the wind. Their shadows stretched long across the earth, 2 very different people, bound by the same thing, a will that refused to bow. And out here in the West, sometimes, that's all you need to start a new life. You know, out here, land and water are worth plenty. But the rarest thing of all is a soul willing to stand and fight for what's right. Sometimes what you buy with money is just the excuse fate uses to bring you face to face with someone who shares the same vein of courage. Like sitting beside the fire tonight, I've come to understand, the most valuable thing a man can keep isn't land or gold. It's a promise, and a hand you can hold till the very end of the trail. Once again, I'm truly honored to have you here. Tell me what you felt in your heart as you heard this story. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Type Ina if you enjoyed it. And don't forget to subscribe, so you won't miss the next